Which sicha?
We're going to learn the first sicha in Chelik Yud Ches of Parsha Shlach. Chelik Yud Ches. We're following the project of the sicha Seder.
I know it's Shlach. I know it's Ches. The first sicha.
First sicha, yeah. In 1 or 2 minutes, we'll start.
Right.
Okay, I think we'll start. Okay, so this will be the sicha. First sicha in Parsha Shlach, Chelik Yud Ches. Look at the sichas. So before we start the sicha inside, I just want to mention the Akdome to the Rasha that we're going to learn, that in the end of Parsha Ba'aleischa, the Torah tells us the story of Miriam, that Miriam spoke against Moshe Rabbeinu. It wasn't really against Moshe Rabbeinu, but Miriam heard that Moshe, found out that Moshe Rabbeinu separated from his wife. So she mentioned it, and she and Aaron spoke about it, obviously not meaning anything bad, but they spoke that Nebuchadnezzar Rachmanis pity on his wife. So the Eibishter was upset. He spoke against Moshe, and then the Eibishter made her into a Betzera. She got leprosy, and then she had to be locked up for 7 days. And well, Omli Nos, the Pasuk says that as long as she was locked up, no one traveled. But Achar, after she got locked up and she was finished with the 7 days, the people traveled from Chatzeres. They were in the area called Chatzeres, and they traveled. After that happened, they traveled by Yachtem Midbar Poran, and they rested in Midbar Poran. Then comes the Parsha Shlach right after that, and it said, Hashem spoke to Moshe, said, Shlach Locha Anoshim, send people to spy, so to speak, Eretz Yisrael. And where did they go from? Since they rested in Chatzeres, so the Pasuk says, from Chatzeres, he sent them from Chatzeres to go to Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi, the first Rashi in the Parsha, will read the Sicha inside, and the Rebbe will bring the Rashi. In Ascholas HaSeder stellt sich Rashi of the Werte Shlach Locha Anoshim. In the beginning of the Parsha, Rashi quotes the words from the Pasuk where it says, Shlach Locha Anoshim, send people to spy Eretz Canaan, Eretz Yisrael. And this is Mefarish, and this is what Rashi says. After he quotes the words, which are also exact, every word that Rashi quotes in the Dibur HaMaschal, in the quote of the Chumash, he only quotes those words which are negated to the Pshat. So he quotes the 3 words Shlach Locha Anoshim. And this Mefarish, Rashi says like this. Lama nismacha Parshas Meraglim, the Parshas Miriam. Why is Parsha of Meraglim written very close, right after the Parsha of Miriam? And the answer is, since she was punished for the talking, she was involved in talking what she said. She spoke against her about her brother. So she was punished for it. So what does that show? That for Lashon Hara you get punished, which means you have to not speak Lashon Hara. These Rishoyim, these Meraglim, who the Rashi refers to them as Rishoyim, they saw this, all the Eden saw this, so they saw this, and they didn't take Musa from this. They didn't take a lesson. So that's what the Pasuk says, to show how bad they were, that even though they saw what happened to Miriam in connection to what she spoke, nevertheless, they didn't care, they didn't take a lesson, and they also spoke bad against Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, we have to understand like this. He says, I spoke many times. As von dem, was nur in gezählte Erde bei Worten Rashi dem Tam Sichas HaParshas, since we find an interesting thing, only in a few places in Chumash does Rashi explain the connection between one Parsha and the other. Every Parsha you could explain. What's the connection between this Parsha, that Parsha? Rashi doesn't do that. Only seldom, few places. Is mucha, from that we prove as a derech pshat, derech Rashi v'pirush al that according to the derech of Rashi, which is the derech of shute shemika, the simple pshat, is concussion it of avos zayin and dafke di parsha is muchas. There is no kasha. In pshat, we don't look into see why one parsha, one inyan is connected to, is close to the other. When the parsha is coming al seder azmanim, especially if the seder of the parsha, the order of the parsha, fits exactly to the time, to the way it was. In other words, in this case, the story of the Meraglim actually happened right after the story of Miriam. So certainly there is no kasha. B'chlal there is no kasha in Pshuto Shmika why one parsha comes close to the other. Certainly if it goes poshet al pizman that this happened right after the previous parsha. He's not moving, but didn't the down be meforshim fragrance. So in our case, it's not understood. Meforshim asked. Since the sending of the Meraglim actually happened right after the story of Miriam, if morgen noch the Shiva Semei has Miriam, and the day after the 7 days period of her being locked up was finished, so then right away happened this. So al derech hapshad, why are you asking Lom Nismecha? B'chlal, it's not a kasha. Certainly when it happened right after, that's why it's close, because right after the story of Miriam, this happened. That's one kasha b'chlolos. We also have to understand certain questions in the Lashon of Rashi. The other one was not a kasha on the Lashon, it was a kasha on the Teichen, and the contents of what Rashi said. Here's on the Lashon. Number Mehen, the Rebbe says, amongst those, the Rebbe is not even asking quite a few questions, but there are even more. Number one, Rashi uses the Lashon of Ishalokso al Iske Diba, because they saw that Miriam was punished al Iske Diba. Iske Diba means getting involved in speaking. Rashi is very simple. She got punished for Lashon Hora. In Parsha Shmeis, Rashi mentions that she was punished for Lashon Hora. So why doesn't Rashi say very clear? She was punished for Lashon Hora. Rashi says it's a strange law. She's punished because she was involved in speaking. The kasha is noch starker. This kasha is stronger. In a weiter die Posik teilt Rashi up the word diba. In a later Posik, Rashi says that the word diba, what does it mean? So Rashi says like this: Kol heitzo as diba. Any type of talk you talk, it could be called diba. Loshen chinuch dvarim is the way you speak. V'yeshna l'teva, v'yeshna l'ro. The word diba doesn't necessarily mean bad. Diba means talking. Sometimes the word diba goes on good things. So why does Rashi, when he wants to say that she was punished for Lashon Hora, Rashi says she was punished because she was involved in diba. In diba is nicht muchach kenchet. Saying she was involved in diba, diba doesn't show it's wrong, it's an aveda. Other rabbis can, because I'm telling you, it could be something you could talk good. So certainly Rashi should have written very clear that she was punished for Lashon Hora, which we know clearly what the chet is, what aveda is. Rashi says for iske diba, which doesn't even say what it was, that it was bad. Second kasha, why does Rashi add that she spoke this diba, which was the Lashon Hora, on her brother? The main thing that Rashi is trying to say, she was punished for what she spoke. The Meraglim should have taken a lesson, and they didn't. What difference on who she spoke? The main thing is Rashi should have said she spoke diba, they saw it. They should have taken a lesson to be careful what they say, and they didn't. A third kasha, Gimel. Why does Rashi write, these Rishoyim saw this and they did not take a lesson? Rashi Gedar sagen the Kitzer, they saw. We know we're talking about these guys, the Meraglim. Why does Rashi have to say Rishoyim alol, the call of Rishoyim? What's the gay here to call? Should have said they didn't take a lesson. Fourth kasha, Hadiyuk rov, it's a strange lotion. They saw and they didn't take a lesson. Unit, Rashi should have said, they saw a lesson and they didn't keep it. A different place in Chumash in Dvarim, Rashi Taka but this Indian says the same thing, but Rashi uses Lashon. They saw something of a lesson and they didn't take it. But here he says they saw what she did and they didn't take a lesson. It's a strange Lashon. Hey, the fifth kasha. The whole Rashi is trying to explain Shlach. Shlach means this was the sending of the Meraglim. Why does he have to also quote Shlach, the two words L'cho Anoshim? So given genug Semitic sein the word Shlach. It would have been enough if he was just written Shlach. Al derech in oming Parshat Baleischa. For instance, example, the beginning of Parshat Baleischa, where Rashi is Eich Mefarish Smichas Parshas. Rashi there also explains the Smichas there, why the Parshat Baleischa of the Menorah is written right after the end of the one before. Rashi says, why is the Parsha the Bereket right after the Nisim? Rashi explains why. So what does Rashi do? He writes the word Ba'aleischa, which we know this is the Parsha that we're talking about, and he writes, what's the connection, what's the smichas between Ba'aleischa, which is the Parsha Hamanera and the Nisim, etc., etc. He doesn't quote Ba'aleischa as Haneres, when you light the Manera. Why here does he say Shlach Lacha Anoshim? I should have said the first word, which we know what we're talking about. We're talking about the Meraglim, Shlach, send the people. Why does Rashi have to write the word Anoshim? So the Rebbe answers like this, that was verstanden in the Kasha from Ramban. To answer that, we'll have to first bring the Kasha of the Ramban, as the Rebbe says in Order 8. How do we bring in other Meforshim when we're trying to explain Rashi, Pshuta Shel Mikra, and other Meforshim are not Pshuta Shel Mikra? But this question that the Ramban asks happens to be a Kasha, which is a very simple Kasha, even in simple Pshat of the Pasuk. So we could quote it from the Ramban, but really it's a Kasha that is al Piseichel when you learn Pshuta Shel Mikra. What's terrible about the sin of the Meraglim? What did they do so wrong? They were sent special for this. Moshe Rabbeinu told them when he sent them, what am I sending you for? Find out what is the land like, what kind of people are there, is it strong, what kind of cities are there. So what's their Aveda? This is Lashon of the Ramban. They came and told the truth. What they saw. What did they say? The people are strong. You asked me to tell you how the people are. They're strong. The city is surrounded with walls. They just answered what they saw, and that's what they were told to do. You could answer it like this. They didn't just give a report of what they saw. They also said a certain evaluation, so to speak. They said that this is a land that eats up its inhabitants, that a lot of people died. That they shouldn't have said, because that they wouldn't ask to say. You're giving your opinion about what type of land it is. Just say what you saw. Or maybe the problem is that they, besides giving over what they saw, they also added an end saying, "As leinu chalalis, we won't be able to go up." They said. No one asked them for their opinion if you're going to be able to go up. Just say what you saw. And they said, they're strong. They're stronger than us, stronger than the Eibishter. But that can't be an answer what their Avera was. But the Ramban himself says, before they said these things, these extra things, mixed in, and he made them all quiet. He's moving, and in other words, he felt that what the Meraglim said, without even saying that we can't go up, they just gave over the report. Right away, Kolev said, remember, it's no problem, as if in what they said before was already the problem. He's moving for them as the Friedricherei. That shows that what they said before, that you can't go up, etc. Just by saying, Efes Kiasom, saying the nation is strong, and the cities are strong, the boy already was no good. That's why Kolev started telling the Eden, don't worry about what they said. So you can't answer the reason is because they said what they said later, because this itself seems to be a problem. But also, I feel as they expected to get even what they said later, that they came to a maskana, they came to a decision that we will not be able to go. You could say it's not a sin. It's wrong what they said, but sometimes you say something wrong, and I could find an excuse why you did that wrong thing. Then it's not a chet. Why could I say that? So I'm not gesagt leinale. They didn't say we will not go, which is against what Hashem said. Nor leinuchalal, he said we cannot go. That could be a description in the situation. By their evaluating the strength of the people in Israel, and the keiches von Eden, and on the other hand, what power the Eden had. They just said, we can't do it. In other words, naturally, we won't be able to do it. They didn't say we won't. In other words, maybe through miracles we could do it. But they were asked that. Even if what they said they're stronger than him, meaning even they said like Hashem, that even Hashem, so to speak, can't fight them. It doesn't mean in Derech Hapshat that they denied in the Eibush, they didn't believe in the strength of the Eibush there. All they said was, that we saw that the nations are so much stronger than the Eden, As we can sich gar nicht vorstellen, wie Azemi wird sich kennen einkennen, viele Technischen. We can't imagine even how miracles could work. Not that it won't work. They said we know it won't work. We can't imagine how it's going to work. We can't imagine how the Eibush is going to do it. That's an expression we do a lot of times. So even a miracle won't work. But the far is Kolev Steine enter given. That's why when Kolev answered, didn't say nicht as me ken einem Eretz Yisrael apiteve. Kolev didn't come and say no, they're not so strong, and we could manage. He didn't say that. Und nicht nur as Eibush wird beikommen du sich nisim stam. They didn't even say that, you know what, but don't worry, there will be miracles. Nor all in Isla. They said, they didn't come to answer and say that miracles won't work. The Meraglim looks like said that we can't see how even miracles could work. So they didn't come and say, yeah, miracles will work. All they said was, we will go up. And Rashi says they meant, Afila Bashamayim, will go up even to heaven. What David says, even if he tells us, take ladders and go to Shemayim, which means what? Not that a regular miracle could work. I didn't say that. Meant our following the Meibishn on a cheshbon. That's what they said. We have to listen to Hashem and don't make cheshbonos. I feel when they're going to Eretz Yisrael is bedugmet azach was hakemelit. I feel nit benes nit pasir. Olay naila b'shemaim. Even if it needs something that never happened yet, not even a miracle like that happened, we still have to do it. That's what they said. So they didn't come to say against it. So Mamela, what's possible? That when they said we can't fight them, and even the Eibishter with Nisim can do it, didn't mean that they're denying the Eibishter and it's a chet. They had to describe the situation the way they were asked to. And in their mind, they felt that they're so strong, derech hateva, we can do it. Even normal miracles can do it. But we still might go. They didn't say no. And since the purpose of them being sent was to find out how strong the people are, why do they have to know how strong they are? Because we should be ready even up in derech hateva. That's what they wanted today. They knew that Eibush could do miracles. So what's negated to know if they're strong or not? To know which cities they should start. The Ramban even talks about it, how they could go, because they were trying to see what they could do in Derech HaTeva. And Al Pi Teva is the offshots from the Meragel and Nuchal Alas Geonemis. Al Pi Teva, naturally, when they came to their evaluation that we can to do it, is true. And naturally, it can do it. And they had to give their report, an honest report. That's what they did. What's so the big fuss over their Aveda? Their mitzvah they haben gesagt die Maskone für ihre Abschatzen. What's so terrible? Even if you're going to say the bad part was that they came to a decision that we can't go. That's part of their evaluation. That the evaluation is we saw that they are very strong and we can't go. Now, will we go? Maybe they didn't say we won't go. Maybe we'll go and rely on Hashem. So that's a Meidike Kasha that we have in the whole story of the Meraglim. This is a kasha that Rasha wants to answer by what he says in the first Rasha, that they saw what happened to Miriam and they didn't take a lesson. By putting the two parshas together, that gives us to understand what the problem was with the Meraglim, what we did. And the question was, why does Rasha ask such a question? The question is not really the question the way you ask it. That's only an introduction to say something which will really answer another question. They're beaten, they've never explained it like this. Those was Rasha fragt Loma Nismacho. When Rasha asks the Kasha, why is the Parsha of Meraglim written right close to the Parsha of Miriam? And the problem with this question is, the story of the Meraglim happened right after the story of Miriam. So what's Rasha's Kasha we asked before? So the Rebbe says like this. Sometimes, Adarabe, when it comes to two parshas, even though they might they were in time, they were close. There's a reason why the Fedish to separate between them. There's a reason. Even in the case where, if you go according to the timeline, they should be one after another. There is a reason that the Torah should have separated. And we find that before, by the Parsha of Ahibin Seyoren, in Parsha Ba'aleischo, there's a Parsha of Ahibin Seyoren. So really, it doesn't belong there. Rasha says, why was it written where it is? Before that talks about Yidden being punished. After that about Yidden being punished. And the Torah wants to make a separation between them, not to go to punishment after punishment. So we see here that sometimes the Torah puts in something in between which it doesn't belong there to mafsik. So al derech zeh b'inyaneinu. So here also there is a reason why the Torah should be dafke not have written the Parsha Meraglim close to the Parsha of Miriam, even though in time it came right after another for a different reason. Why? The Shas will learn the two Parshas, Parshas Miriam, Parshas Meraglim. One will learn these two Parshas, the story of Miriam, the Parsha Meraglim. Ain't another tzveit. One right after another, as it's written. If you learn it like that, when the beide retzich wegen Aniyim from Lashon Hora, and they're both talking about speaking Lashon Hora. Miriam speaking Lashon Hora, and the Meraglim speaking Lashon Hora. Someone can make a major mistake. They would think that if they go together and they see here Lashon Hora, so they're both on the same level, chas v'sholom. Or at least similar. In other words, not only somoch close in the way it's written, close in madrege. That Miriam was also pretty bad. That's what it seems like. So therefore, the Torah should bedafke have not written close to another. Even though everyone who knows the story knows right away that they're not the same. You see the result. See what happened. By Miriam, after she spoke Lashon Hora. And she was punished, she was in lockdown for 7 days. What happened is Miriam. No, the nation did not travel. They were supposed to travel. But the Eibishter Rasha says the Torah, the Eibishter gave her covet when she was being locked in prison, so to speak, for 7 days. The Torah, the Eibishter gave her covet and no one traveled. That's what happened. That's by Miriam. Mashenke by the Meraglim, what happened is number one, the Meraglim by Yemusim of Magef. What was the result there? They died in the plague. A second thing, the ganze Dora people by Midbar. The result was that all the Yidden died within the 40 years of the desert. And the third thing, Iberdem is B'nechem Yireim by Midbar Aboim Shana. And the children who were not part of the Aveda, the next generation, had to go in the Midbar for 40 years. So we see the difference. So how would we say that the Torah really should have separated? Because otherwise we would make a mistake and think Miriam, the Meraglim are at the same level of Lashon Hora. Here you see right away, you see the end result. You can't say they're the same. But no, you could still say Ados is neither for the Meraglim than the Gevan Shoyim Chulu. You might say the reason why they were punished so badly, not because they were Shoyim. Durch nicht sein Säure bei die Buram sind alle Jiden nicht so geworden im Riede B'Hashem und nicht wollen gehen können zu Israel. They definitely were not careful what they said. The truth is, they didn't lie. They gave over a report. But they had to be careful how they say it. And they weren't careful. And what did that cause? Not just, sometimes you're not careful. So it made an uproar, all the Yidden. And all the Yidden were stumbled in the fact that they rebelled against Hashem. And they weren't able to go to Israel. You see what they caused? So the reason they were so punished is because they were not careful and they brought about a terrible thing. When she spoke Lashon Hora, it was a private thing. So it's maybe Bemes, the Meraglim and Miriam are equal. Similar at least. The reason she was not punished is she was given cover because it was a private problem she had. Okay, she got punished and that's it. And the Meraglim, they did it in public. They did it in a way they were not careful and it caused a major problem. That's why they got punished. You would think so. And therefore, there is a reason why the Torah should be mafsik in between. When the father is Rasha Maitik in the Dibra Maschal, that's why Rasha, we asked the Kasha, why in the Dibra Maschal, the first words of Rasha, he quotes from the Posik, Shlach L'cha Anoshim, not only the word Shlach, also L'cha Anoshim. Now we know why. Rasha, by writing the words in the Dibra Maschal, is or negate to the Kasha or negate to the text. In this case, why does he write it? This adds more the possibility that Miriam and the Meraglim were the same or at least similar. These words would make the problem, the possibility of a mistake, and think they're equal even more. Why? What does it mean, Shlach L'cha Anoshim? So Rashi says, L'cha means L'daitecha. L'cha means, the Eibusher told Moshe, it's up to you, for Moshe. So Moshe had a responsibility. So the Eibusher said, it's up to you, that you have the right decision to make about this major responsible mission. But since Moshe, who was the one to choose, and he chose these people for such a special, most important mission, shows they have milas. Und nicht da milas, nor in the minyan hashlichus befrad, milas in this. So Rashi quotes the word shlach, which is the general idea of meraglim, lecha, which means the Eibush said to Moshe, you do it, you choose. Obviously, they were great people. Bis the Torah ruft sie anoshim. The Torah calls them anoshim, men. Was meint the Rashi said, what does it mean? What do you think they were not men? Loshen chshivus shows how important they were. Ksherim hoyer, they were tzaddikim at that time. So Rashi quotes the word shlach lecha anoshim, showing that the possibility of a person to think that the meraglim and Miriam are pretty close, because the meraglim were also great people. How do we see the great people? Lecha, Moshe, when they decided to send them, and it was anoshim. Rashi anoshim means they were great, choshev people. Und klar machen, Adam Raglan seine nicht verschollen auf eine ähnliche Darge, in order to take away this possibility of thinking that the Meraglim are like Miriam, and to show that, to make it clear that the Meraglim are not in the same level of Miriam. Hat die Teire, der Chure, gedacht, Mafsig sein zwischen die zwei Parshas mit einander Inyan. So the Teire should have separated another Inyan, and then separated two, they're not the same. And he fragt Rashi, lo man nis mecha Parshas Meraglim and Parshas Miriam. Rashi asks, why is Meraglim close to Miriam, when really it shouldn't have been close? Even though in time it was close, but there's a reason why it shouldn't be. So even though usually Rashi doesn't ask such a question, certainly when the time fits, but in this case it was different. So therefore Rashi answers that the reason that's written closely, al these kedibos, since she was punished for getting involved in speaking, these Rishonim saw and they didn't take a lesson. What does it mean? It means like this. Torah is masking the two parshas. The Torah puts the two parshas together to tell us another detail in how terrible the chet avera of the meraglim was. But those far entfed al derech apshat. This will explain in Pshat, Geidel Einsham, why their punishment was so great. What is it? Because the Torah puts the two together, showing how terrible they were. Because what does it show? As they gehat erst od bismichus, a Gelegenheitsnehmer was they just had very close. Okay, the Torah puts it close. You were very close to Miriam's case, so there is a very close union of taking a lesson. For Ma'aseh Miriam, from the story of Miriam, they didn't take Musar. So it's not only the Aveda themselves that they did. There was an opportunity. They should have normally taken their lesson because it was right after the story of Miriam. So that's why the Torah writes it very close. The Musar is given nicht nur Neif, man hat es gedacht, Arustlene durch reintrachten sich und was man hat gesehen. And the Rebbe even adds, it wasn't the lesson they should have taken. Sometimes you see something and you think about it and you contemplate and you think you come to a decision that this teaches you a lesson. This was a lesson that they saw. There is nothing that they had to think about. That you had to think about it. But that's not gedarf nehmen zu sich. They saw it. They should have just taken it to heart, taken it to themselves. They saw it. Von dem, was sie am gedarf nehmen musste von Ma'aseh Miriam, the fact that they should have taken a lesson from the story of Miriam. Is Muchach shows that die Chatoim seinen in demselben Zug. It shows like this. When we say they should have taken a lesson, it shows that what Miriam did is similar to what they did, and they should have taken a lesson not to do it. So it must be that what Miriam did has some similarity to what they did. Not that in the Madrege she was the same, Chas v'Sholom, but this was something that would have taught them a lesson, because it would have been something very close to what they did. So they should have taken a lesson. They should have taken how wrong it was from how wrong Miriam's was. If Miriam's was wrong, they should have realized that this is the wrong what they saw. We don't know yet what it is. What is it that Miriam is close to her? But the bottom line, what Rashi is trying to tell us, the Torah writes it close to tell you that they were so bad that not only they did something wrong, whatever it was, but they had the opportunity to take the lesson, because it was a very obvious lesson, just have to take it to heart, and they didn't. And this was a lesson they could have taken because it was very similar to what they did. And then the Rebbe continues, then he'll explain it. That's why Rashi adds, we asked before, why does he add the words, and these Rishonim saw it and they didn't take a lesson? Rashi shows, and they saw, we know who we're talking about. Why did Rashi write again here that these were Rishonim? The Midbar Vornte, but this is trying to tell us, as the Vergleich zwischen the Miros from the Beide Parsha is Norben Negeit Chet. The similarity between the two, Miriam, Parsha Miriam, and the Meraglim, is only concerning the Avere. But the Negeit dimension, the Avera has a similarity, but the people is nicht stam chaytim v'chulu. These people are so far away from the level of Miriam. Not only they're sinners, nor the shoyim alolu. They're the shoyim. Heipech betachlis of Miriam, complete opposite of Miriam. Was mot esh mismichas gelernt as kovet cholak lamokim. Miriam, which we just learned that the Torah, the Eibishter gave her kovet while she was locked up. So she's the tzaddikus. They are the shoyim. So Rashi is trying to say, the reason I feel Rashi says that the Torah should have separated, we shouldn't make a mistake, they're the same. Right? And why does it say together? Not to say that the Chas v'Sholom they're the same, because they're not the same. But Rashi stressed you should know they're not the same. They're the shoyim, and she's not. The reason it says together is because they should have learned a lesson from her, because the teichen of what was about the Aveda had a similarity between what she did and what they did. But we don't understand. What was Take? Her sin. Let's look into another to see if her sin is similar to the sin of the Meraglim, even though she was at stake, but it has a certain similarity. You have to look into what was her sin b'chlal. What did she do? What we know is she did. She spoke about Moshe, that Moshe separated from his wife. Rashi says before, she spoke on Moshe concerning the woman that he married, and now he divorced her, separated himself from her. That's what she said. That's the terrible thing that Miriam said. You know, that's given on Emes. It's true. He divorced her, which mele she had side. She suffered. She didn't have the husband. So what's wrong with her? So she said the truth. No, so she didn't mean to say anything bad about him. Rashi says earlier, she didn't mean to say something in his, to insult him or something. So it nicht nur nicht gemacht Abschätzung von Meiles Moshe. The whole problem she had was she didn't evaluate Moshe's greatness. As much as she should. As is eine noch mehr von der Meile was bei Moshe diber Hashem. She said like this. What was her saying? Hashem speaks with Moshe. Hashem speaks to us also, and we don't separate. So the truth is she was wrong, because Moshe is even higher than just Stam Hashem speaking. She didn't realize that. She thought that Moshe should not have separated from his wife. Is then so the nicht verstehen the godless formation like Achlisa kommt ihr as einisch? Is it pshat that because she didn't realize the greatness of Moshe to the fullest extent, so she has to punish for that? That's all it was. All it was is she didn't say anything wrong. She had the truth. But she didn't realize how great Moshe was. That kind of punishment. Zogt Rashi, that's what Rashi says. Exactly, that's it. Adechet is bashtan nit in dibaro. That's what Rashi doesn't say. She spoke bad. She didn't speak bad. And Haveda was not the fact that she spoke bad, because she didn't. Nor in Iske Diba, Rashi, the problem was that she spoke. That's why Rashi writes Diba, and Diba could be good or bad. It's speaking. Die Etzem Sach, was sie hat sich vernommen. Sie hat sich eise gegeben mit Diba, mit Reden, bei Riches, v'chulu, wegen Moshe. The problem was, why speak about Moshe? Why speak? Why get involved in speaking about Moshe? Why are you speaking about Moshe? B'shas Miriam had gesehen by Moshe Hanhoge, was sie versteht. But she saw something Moshe did that she didn't understand. But sie nicht gedacht reden wegen dem. She didn't have to speak about it. Und noch bei Saskas in involvement. She had nur gesagt, even though she said the truth. Und noch mal in Skabna the Gnusikin. As I said before, she didn't mean anything bad. She didn't mean to say something wrong about him. She still shouldn't have spoken. Talking about Moshe, all things like this will not bring any good. Sometimes it says somebody, even you say good things about somebody, in certain situations it could bring, someone will hear it and it says, you'll say something good about him, but someone else will hear, this guy, yeah, it's like good, but there's something else bad about it. You can never know. Not to talk about others. She didn't understand Moshe's behavior. Und zu verstehen, in order to understand Moshe's behavior, hat sie gedacht, fragen ihm allein bei der Scheile. Moshe should have asked him quietly. The problem was, why make a fuss over it and talk about it? That was her chet. So now we know what the chet of Miriam was. She didn't say bad things. The speaking itself, she didn't say wrong things. The mere fact that she got involved in speaking of Moshe. Similar to that was the sin of the Meraglim. So they didn't lie about Eretz Yisrael. The way they spoke, they got involved in the speech. So they spoke so much. Baret means even in a negative way. They spoke about, they could have said, of course, yes, they're very strong. You asked me to say if they're strong, yes, they're strong. The cities are strong, the cities are strong. they went in and got involved in speaking. Bis so abschrecken even from Bechlal in that Israel. The way they spoke, the way they stressed the fact that the report that they gave, that caused the Yidden not to want to go. So here it's not what they said, but it's how they said it. Same thing like Miriam. The teichen of what she said wasn't wrong, but the mere fact that she said it and made a fuss over it, same thing with them. They wondered, how does Hashem tell us to go to Israel when the people there are very strong? They should have said short, This is what's there, that's it. I don't know. We don't understand why, but this is what it is. Or the Pasha fragged by Moshe, simple. They should have asked Moshe himself. The Hisaskos, the Iske Diba, the fact they were involved in speaking. Vananderreden, in other words, go into the details. Vananderreden sich wegen der Starkheit von die Yeshvaretz, about the strength of the people who live there. Bis and came to a decision, we can't go. Even if they didn't mean that we can't, they meant that they're so strong that we can't imagine how we could go, but we will go maybe. But they said it in such a way, all that could do, the way they spoke about it, that it could bring Eden to rebel. This is and brother, the Eden said, let's go back to Mitzrayim. Let's get a different leader and go back to Mitzrayim. So that's what it says. So they saw what happened to Miriam, and Miriam said the truth, and the words were not bad. Nevertheless, it was punished. So they should have realized the same thing, that what they say might be true, but you got to know how to say it. How does what happened? Why is it that Miriam got involved in speaking about Moshe? Das verstandig von der Teine, we could understand from her complaint. Only with Moshe Hashem spoke. He spoke to us also. Wissendig as Bonu Diber to Miriam and Aaron, knowing she know that the Eibishter spoke to her and spoke to Aaron, hat sie bei ihr nicht abgelegt, that the Hechigkeit von Moshe, as grace, she didn't imagine that the greatness of Moshe is so much bigger than theirs, this to make a woman who is a tzadekis. Rasha says Isha Kush is black, means that just like black is clearly black, she was clearly a tzadekis, she was beautiful in everything. So is that, as great as Moshe was, is that enough to free him from allowing her to have tzad, this special woman? But freeing them from Kim Tzivi Hashem, and that freed him from fulfilling the Eibishter's mitzvah of giving a wife her time, these lifresh when Isha and that brought to separating from the wife. That's why she spoke. In other words, she meant, so to speak, well. And it's only because she didn't realize that Moshe's greatness is so great. Yes, it's greater than all that. That was, so what her taina was. So we see what the reason why she did this. Because the question was, why Taka did she speak? Because she felt that she didn't think Moshe was right. But the same way. This is what they thought. Moshe Rabbeinu, based on Hashem, telling him that it's up to him to choose, chose us. It's in their shlichus, so in this shlichus that we were chosen based on Hashem's words. Obviously, we're the best. We are the best mevinim in this mission. Nobody could be greater than our understanding because we were the one chosen to this mission. And since they, as shluchim of the Eibishter, felt in their own eyes, felt very low. It says we looked like grasshoppers in front of the earth. That's how it was. So they felt for sure. So this is what they feel is really what Hashem wants, because they were chosen through Hashem telling Moshe to choose. And b'meiled, not only it's negated by everybody, that their opinion counts more than anybody else because they were chosen as shluchim. So they took out a decision, and they felt that they could say it in the name of all the Yidden because they were the representatives that are better than all the Yidden. They came to that decision. Since in their mind they couldn't understand how you could go to Yisrael. That's what they felt. We have to bring this out. So the question was, why did they speak like that? Because they felt they have the right to do that. And not only, they had an obligation maybe to do that, which is similar to Miriam. Miriam also felt, she spoke because she felt that Moshe was wrong. And Hashem spoke to us also. The Meragim also felt that even though Moshe said, but we have to give our opinion very strongly because this is what really they thought Hashem was. This will also explain what Rasha adds, that Miriam spoke against her brother. And we asked in the beginning, that I've asked, What's Nagay who she spoke against? The main thing is she spoke Lashon Hara, got punished. The Meraglim should have taken a lesson, and they didn't. So why does Rashi Taka bring she spoke to the brother? Because it's noch mer mavaya with the Meraglim loka Musa for Miriam, and this explains more the pshat that the Meraglim did not take a lesson from Miriam in the minyan von Opshatz not zweiten Hecher for sich. In this thing, the similarity Miriam and them is Miriam didn't evaluate Moshe Rabbeinu's greatness, thought they were just as great, or at least in the same level. And same thing with the Meraglim. The Meraglim thought they were the greatest. So by writing that they didn't, that she spoke against her brother, shows something more biur in the idea that they didn't take a lesson from Miriam in how to evaluate somebody else and how great that somebody else is greater than you. By Miriam is given a prat in dem chet was liber bachel. By Miriam, a part of the Avera was that she spoke on Moshe, spoke on her brother. But the point here is the brother. Why? What's the brother? Was a brother in the chotzip sorei. The brother is like half of your flesh. You're like really one. Beteva is schwer zuzugeben auf einen eigenen Bruder, als ist chotzip sorei. It's hard to admit about a brother who is really like you. He's half of your flesh. Und zusammen damit and still he should be completely beyond you. So we can't blame her really for thinking that Moshe is not that great, because she couldn't imagine. I'm a sister, so I'm also great. So how much greater can it be? So you could justify basically her mistake. Her mistake was she didn't realize how great Moshe was, but I could justify that. And nevertheless, she was punished for what she's saying. The Meraglim should not think more than that. So certainly they shouldn't have assumed that Moshe and Aaron, all the Eden have to follow what they think because they're the greatest. There are people greater than you. So Mother, she that her speaking against Moshe, not realizing his greatness makes sense. And nevertheless, she was punished. The Meraglim should have said, in that case, if there's nothing they certainly should have taken the lesson. So now we understand the discussion. Noch a dik is doing the Pirish Rashi. It's another dik in Rashi. Rashi says, Rishoyim alolu rov leilok chomuser. These Rishoyim saw, and they didn't take the lesson. The Chura is the word ro ibrik. The word they saw is extra. So Kedav Shtei, Rishoyim alolu leilok chomuser. Teda puts the story of the Meraglim next to Miriam, because the Rishoyim, after the story of Miriam, and these Rishoyim did not take a lesson. What's the thing? They saw and they didn't take a lesson. What's the word they saw? This will be understood by another question in the general story of the Meraglim. What's in this Chadash geworden by the Meraglim? What new ideas came to the Meraglim when they came to see Eretz Yisrael? And if I say feel, so much so that they got scared when they came there, and they said we can't go. What new thing did they see? The alle Sachen, was eben dort gesehen, all the things they saw, the people are strong, etc., etc., haben sie gewusst von früher. They knew that from before. Every Yidden knew, all the Yidden knew how strong they are. How do we know they knew? Number one, first of all, the Rebbe says, man noch in Mitzrayim gewusst, was is der Matzev, was es kommt von Eretz Canaan. People knew from one part of the world to the other, not like that, obviously, but they still knew. So people in Mitzrayim didn't know how strong the people of Canaan are. The Ramban says this also. For sure they knew, number one. Number two, in the Shira, as Yosher, all the Eden said that the miracle Hashem did by Kriyas Yamsuf made all the people of Canaan melt, getting scared. So obviously they knew that the people in Canaan are strong. Und sehr stark, sehr strong. Anders doch cannot flow, it doesn't make it. When they said people in Canaan got scared, if they're not strong, what's the big deal? Why did they get scared? But the Chiddush was that even though they're so strong, they got scared. So obviously they knew already by the Kriyas Yamsuf that they were strong. But 8 other places would so definitely they knew. Und for deswegen sei sie gewinnt great to gain Eretz Yisrael. And as long as they heard all these things, they were ready to go. So what happened all of a sudden that they saw it? They knew that before. What changed their mind? What got them scared? Is there beer in them? Yes, the answer is very simple. The Gemara says that hearing is not like seeing. Seeing is different. As long as they only heard how strong the people in Canaan is, they didn't care about the hardships. They were ready to go. When they saw with their own eyes, as they're strong, but as they that had an effect that now they changed their mind. When they heard about it is one thing, but when they saw it, It changed their mind. But the Faram, the Meragel Matish, when Kamapom in Broino, you see, when they said things, we saw the Ajayans, they constantly said, we saw. Was it the sale? They said, we saw it ourselves. They came to show him the fruit, and they wanted to show, look how the fruit is not normal, so the people are digging not normal. So they wanted to show him because they saw when you see things, it has a complete different effect. The far the Rasha Matgishain as a shoyim halolu ro. That's what Rasha said. The question was, why isn't it they saw? Because this is what Rasha is trying to. These are showing saw. Eich the musaro. The lesson not to care, they also saw. The Balda sie maling gesehen, was the passiert mit Miriam, and Rasha said they saw what happened to Miriam. Hat sie gedarf geben demselben Teke, vorbeizukommen, dem nicht so in für ihn in Eretz Canaan. It should have gave him the strength to overcome the fact what they saw in Eretz Canaan. Because they saw the opposite. They saw how terrible Lashon Hara is. They saw it. So this, even though here they saw it, they should know that this strength could this seeing should overcome the other strength. Had they just heard about the punishment of Miriam, hard to claim, why didn't you take a lesson? Well, the Sibbe was gebracht zum Chet, to give him berie, because then the justification would be the reason why they did the Chet, why they said about Eretz Yisrael, is because they saw it. And the Kayach that we got not to do the Avera, we just heard. So then they could have some kind of excuses. Rasha Madgish Rose, Rasha they saw. This Kayach they got not to sin, also they saw. And Nafa became Musa, and still they didn't take the lesson. So now if you look back, you see all the questions are answered and the whole Rasha is understood. From the Nyonim of Floim and Allah Chelik, Allah Shibetayri, then Pirish Rasha, Chodud Al Kaponim. The Rebbe says, in Rasha you have Yena Shal Teira, which is Chassidus, but you also have what the Shalom calls Inyonim Mufloim, which means even in Halacha, in Nigla Pashut, you have in Rasha, which is Pshuta Shemikro, Rasha also has Inyonim and Nigla in Lomdus in it. So the Rebbe said, I could say an Inyan in this Inyan, which is in Lomdus, in Nigla. It's not like a simple pshat. Lechaduda means it's a sharp chap. First ask a kasha. Wie ist der fortmaßlich Parshas Midian to Parshas Meraglim? After everything said and done, how does Taka Sof Kosov the Torah? For whatever reason, we said the Torah makes Parshas Meraglim close to Parshas Midian to show how terrible they were, that they saw what happened in the same way. But after all, Sof Kosov was durch them ken ver nach Shad of Miriam and as he's in Etfos b'dem to the Meraglim by writing it close. Still, there might be some suspicion that maybe she is like the Meraglim. And it says you have to be clean from the Eibishter for people. If people shouldn't make a mistake, you're bad. So l'chura, after everything's said and done, sof kol sof, we have a problem here. Why did the Torah do that? Which could give somebody an idea like that. L'chura what we can't kemen and verentfen. L'chura, the Rebbe says you can answer. Al pishit as Rasha pirusha Torah based on Rasha shita. This whole next piece is not so clear, so I'm going to first say it by heart, and I'll put it into the words. Tasha holds in Shir Shal Torah, we demand Domer as Torah Megillah Nitten. There's a machlekes in Gemara, and the Eibusha said today, the Moshe Rabbeinu is this parsha, that parsha. Did Moshe write it down right away? Sam told him a certain thing, he wrote it down. A week later, to another, he wrote it down. Or Chasuma Nitten means that Eibusha told Moshe at the end. The 40 years, Moshe took all the parshas, and that's when he wrote them down. Rashi in Chumash learns Megillah Nitna. Moshe had gleich verschrieben the parsha. Every parsha he was told, he wrote it right away. So it makes sense. At the only from parsha Shlach, so at the beginning of parsha Shlach, alles was is vorgekommen in demselben Tag, they were told they left on Chavta 7. So everything that they were told on that day, which is the beginning of parsha Shlach, when they were sent, it was finished. Their mission was given to them. Their shikan and the shaykh's formation is in the shlichus. So they're sending them. They were sent already. So now you're not sending them anymore. Now they're going, and any connection to Moshe is over here. So as soon as that was over, and since Rasha learns Megillah, Nichta, everything was written. But Moshe Rabbeinu was given Azoris, Moshe Rabbeinu, which did everything very fast, very right away. Gleich verschrieben. He wrote it down right away. They need to uphalten them zukommen von noch a Parashim Teresh B'Ksav. Every time it was written down, there's another Parashim Teresh B'Ksav. And if everything was written right away, Moshe didn't wait a day, a week, or something. As soon as it was finished, so we understand that this Parsha was written as right away. On Chof Tesidim, the Parsha was written. Now, I want to say by heart what the Rebbe is trying to say here. In truth, the Parsha of Miriam Taka happened the day before the Parsha of the Meraglim, Mamash the day before. But you know how many things happen? We're talking about millions of people. So even in a day, you know how many things happen? So after the story of Miriam, when she was finished with the 7 days, till the Meraglim, a million things happened, even though it was a very short time. But a lot of things happened. For one of the things that happened is, at the end of Aleischa, right at the end of the story of Miriam, it says that that's when Eden traveled from Chatzeres to Midbar Poran. And the Ma'aseh Meraglim was in Midbar Poran. So they traveled. So really, the story of the Meraglim did not come so close to the story of Miriam. As much as it's close in time, there were so many things that happened in between. So B'meile, it's not such a real chance for people to think that she spoke Lashon Hara, Meraglim spoke Lashon Hara, they're the same thing. Because really, even though the Parsha is written right next to it, but Be'emes, it didn't happen right after. It happened the next day, but with a million things in between. And therefore, the Kasha, the Rebbe is asked here, that L'chura, Sof Kosov, you could make a mistake and think that she's the same level. So L'chura, you could answer that's not so, because there are so many things in between, so it's not the same. Let's read it inside. The moving the Posh, that's the other talk by me, that's very clear, simple. Every day in the desert, that day, Chavches, when the story of Miriam finished, and Chavtes, when the story of the Meraglim happened, there were a lot of things that happened. From Pasirungen, by the Shishim Ribu Yakvorim, Kohena, Vekahena, for Noshim Mechulu. They had 600,000 men, same amount of women, and more. So many things happen to people. I mean, you have so many people. It says that they traveled at the end of Parshas Baleischa. It says, after the Chavches, it says, they traveled, and then and they rested. So travel, imagine millions of people traveling. Every time they traveled, they had to take apart the Mishkan. And then when they stopped, they had to put up the Mishkan. All the things connected to the Mishkan. For the Meyerois is given a ribe godel zwischen the Osef, Miriam, Bechof Kasim, Kedem Siluk Mishkan, and Mira Shlachlacha. So obviously, between Miriam was already finished with the 7 days, and putting up the Mishkan in the new place that they came, and it all happened within that day and a half, these 2 days. So you can imagine how many things happened from between Miriam and the people thinking about all kinds of other things. Till the Shlachlacha, noch an Ufstellen did Golim, they had to put in the Mishkan, they had to put up the camps, they had to put up the Mishkan. Noch about the Kravena, like Chumash in Parshat Dvorim says that the Yidden came to Moshe Rabbeinu complaining, we want to send Beraglim. All that took place. Tausender and tausender passing, thousands upon thousands of happenings. Separated between Miriam's being finished with her thing, with her punishment, and sending of the Meraglim. Not only stamp things that happened, mitzvahs that happened. Because when they traveled, it was a mitzvah. Al pi Hashem Yisu, Yachnu. It was a mitzvah to travel because David told him, and David should rest. Hakravas Kabbanis, the Mishkan, the Bar Bechul, so many things happened. So the Mele really, they're not very close. The Smichos is over given in Moshe Rabbeinu Schreiben from Parshas Meraglim to Parshas Miriam. When he wrote it right after that. Nor derfun or you can't gedarf sein leilok chumus, der lok chumuser. And it's only from the way it's written they should have taken the lesson. So B'meila the Rebbe says, let's minimize in the closeness. B'meila you can't say that the person will make a mistake and think that they're equal because there was a big separation. When Rashi says that they saw and they didn't take Musa, is the way the Torah was written. So on the far, and therefore we overlook the Torah, overlook the fact that it was written in a place where it could give a suspicion that maybe they're the same. The Torah put it. What does Rashi say? Why did the Torah write it here? Because they should have learned the lesson. So the Taka should have learned the lesson. So the Torah didn't do such a terrible thing because all it did, they wrote it close to each other. And the Taka should have learned the lesson the way it's written shows that they should have learned the lesson. But to say that it gives Taka a real possibility to think that they're equal when there was, in time, it was not much time in between, but that millions of things happened in between, that the two things have no connection. So L'chura, the Rebbe says you could answer like that. So he said the word L'chura. As bleibt der Beschwer, but that's still not so clear. So the Chaklal is ein name lot v'chatei b'shvil shis k'chaverach. Sof kosov, it's in other words, there's a din. You can't say to a person, you do a small aveda, so someone else should not have an aveda. That's a call like that. So here also, we're doing something that after all is not the right thing. To put Miriam, the Meraglim next to Miriam is not such a good thing. for the benefit that showing how the Meraglim should have learned. So the question is, can we do something like wrong for somebody in order to help somebody else not to do wrong? The cloud is that we can't do that. So here, where it's after all, we're still doing that. But Rashi answers this question. Rashi by writing, they didn't take Musar. Rashi could have said, they saw what happened to Miriam and they sinned. Rashi says, in other words, they didn't take Musar. What does it mean, doesn't take Musar? They didn't take a lesson not to sin. Rashi wants to tell us that. And that answers the kasha. How? Kedulakam, like I explained. In this cloud, in this rule, that you're not allowed to make someone sin in order somebody else should gain not to sin, is Rashi Mafara. Rashi says it in Gemara like this. You're not allowed to sin a little bit, do some small thing which is wrong, in order that your friend should not be punished. That's what Rashi says. He's not moved, it's not understood, it's a strange lotion. Rashi should have said what it means is you can't sin in order somebody else, a small sin in order somebody else should not do a big sin. What's the greater punishment here? That you can't do it in order somebody else should not be punished with a big punishment. That's not the point. The point is someone else shouldn't sin. You might think you sin a little bit, so someone else shouldn't do a big sin. Rashi doesn't say that. Yeah, Shleimer, the Pshati Rashi is like this in Gemara. Rashi is there is an opinion in Teisvus there. Adosvas ein emrim is dafke when the ma'aseh shel isuk v'nasa. When do we say don't sin a little bit to save somebody else? It's only when the guy did the aveda already, and you'll save him from the punishment. But if we're talking about doing something that your friend should not come to do a sin, a worse sin, then is emrim leichatel. Then the din is we one shit in Teisvus. We do tell a person sin chet kal a light aveda. To protect, save your friend from a strict aveda. And the far is Rashi Madgish. That's what Rashi says there, that we don't tell a person sin a small aveda. Shalei is chayiv, that your friend should not be chayiv an einish chomer, a punishment. A punishment is after you did the aveda. So Madgish is to stress ados vas ein eimrim chulu. That we don't say a person sin a small aveda to protect, save someone else from a bigger, is norvem der isuk vanase when it was done already. From him blaze the mainish, you want to take away the punishment. The Moshe Gemara says you're not allowed to taking out bread from an oven. If you put it in already, if you leave it in, they'll be punished for baking. If you take it out, which is a small isur, whatever the isur is, it'll protect him from a punishment. He did the aveda already, but he won't be punished because he'll take it out before. So Rashi, the Rebbe says, learns like Tosfos, that in the case where you're protecting him from a punishment, he did aveda, but you can't sin a small aveda to protect him from a terrible punishment. But if you want to do a small aveda to protect somebody from a big aveda from being done, that you're allowed to. This explains. How could the Torah write something which makes a possibility, something wrong, to be chesed, to suspect Miriam like she's bad as the Meraglim? And we said, even though it's trying to tell you that it gave a musar to the should have learned for the Meraglim, but you can't have one person, something wrong for one person to save somebody else. But now we know why. While for Parshas Miriam haben die Meraglim gedacht, dort planen und verhitten sich, also milchatchila nicht cheta sein. What should have happened is we're telling that they should have learned from not to sin. You're allowed to put somebody in a position of a small chet to protect somebody from sinning, and that's what it was supposed to be. Und das is Rashi Maramis mit der Werte weil lokchum muser. Question was, why did Rashi say they saw and they didn't take a lesson? It should have said they saw and they sinned. No, to tell you that we're talking about before they sinned. They didn't take a lesson not to sin. While the tachlis for roas muser is kedei zayim shmertem. Rashi says the other place in Dvarim that they saw muser and they didn't keep it. That's what it means. They didn't keep it means what should have happened. What we're trying to do with Miriam, that they should have not sinned. They should have taken the lesson. So far, Hitna mentioned as only Tkumet Zachet und im Bringen zu Anhoge Yeshora, that you're allowed to do this if you're going to protect a person from doing an Aveda and making him behave properly, going the right derech, the right Anhoge. So that's what Rashi says here. So that's what Rashi writes for the Log Chumusar and not the Loshen and the Chotel. But based on all this, we have a proper understanding in the whole Rashi, the Dibra Maschel, and all the words. always like this. When you chazer over a second time, everything becomes clear. This is like a puzzle. Everything falls into place. Like all the sichas of the Rebbe. Okay. Okay, good night to everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi Shapiro. Be well.
Ach, dank.